Hey, how you doing? Jason here, FEMA Region 5, clocking in to give you my Facebook news posts and updates for September 13th, 2013, actually Friday the 13th. Got a lot of news, let's jump in. This is the telegraph.co.uk. Al-Qaeda chief calls for attacks on U.S. and 9/11 speech to followers. In an audio message released on Friday, 2 days after the anniversary on September 11th, Ayman al-Zawahiri said America was not a mythic power and that it could be defeated even through small-scale strikes by one brother or a few of the brothers. We should bleed America economically by provoking it to continue in its massive expenditure on its security, for the weak point of America is its economy, which has already begun to stagger due to the military and security expenditure, he said, according to SITE, a jihadist monitoring group, SITE. America is not a mythic power, and the Americans, after all, are humans who can be defeated, felled, and punished. Zawahiri urged the Islamic world to abandon the dollar and place it with a currency of other countries that are not taking up the aggression against us. He also said that Muslims should refuse to buy goods from America and its allies, as such spending only helped to fund U.S. military action in Muslim lands. So, as you can see, the Al-Qaeda created by Al-Qaeda, or created by the CIA, their goal and admitted goal by Osama bin Laden, a CIA asset, was to completely ruin America economically and financially. And it looks like they have done that. I mean, the war on terror has basically turned on a war on Americans' privacy and our rights. So, the CIA's created Al-Qaeda. Their job to destroy America seems like it is doing its job, and America is destroying itself within. Let's move on to the next article. CIA arming Syria rebels overtly. This is RT.com. In the past 2 weeks, the U.S. has reportedly begun delivering arms to militants fighting the Syrian government. Washington expects the CIA to monitor the delivery so that the aid does not end up in the hands of Al-Qaeda associates. Okay, according to the Washington Post report, after months of promises to provide aid to Syrian rebels in an official manner, Washington has finally sanctioned open delivery of arms and munitions to anti-Assad forces, despite fears that some of the weapons could end up in the hands of Islamic fundamentalists. Now, the key word in here is in an official manner. It says after months of promises to provide aid to Syrian rebels in an official manner. So unofficially, they've been providing weapons to the Syrian rebels, aka Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda affiliates, for well over a year now, and now they're trying to put on tight rope to make sure it doesn't necessarily get to Al-Qaeda. It kind of reminds me of Fast and the Furious. Where was the tight rope on that? They're just giving guns out to Mexican gangsters and drug cartels to kill Americans here back at home. And just another Obama war against our Second Amendment and our right to keep and bear arms. Let's move on to the next article. This is WashingtonExaminer.com. Assad tells Obama to stop arming rebels or no deal. President Obama must promise not to arm rebel forces or Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad will not hand over his chemical weapons. This embattled leader told a Russian state media outlet today, while demanding that Israel also surrender its nuclear arsenal. Yeah, it's kind of a flip side of the coin. Everybody's supporting Israel, and demanding all the nations surrounding Israel give up their nuclear weapons. Well, maybe they might even think about it if the nuclear terrorist state of Israel would at least talk about giving up their nuclear arms. When we see that the U.S. genuinely stands for stability in our region, stops threatening us with military intervention, and stops supplying terrorists with weapons, then we will consider it possible to finalize all necessary procedures that will become legitimate and acceptable for Syria, Bashar al-Assad told RIA News. If you want to read the full article to WashingtonExaminer.com, I'll also post this in my YouTube links. Let's move on. The local.it. 9/11 was an inside job, says Italian Prime Minister. An Italian MP has described the 9/11 terrorist attacks, in which around 3,000 people were killed, as an inside job, and slammed an official version of events as a conspiracy. Bernini, let me pronounce this correct, Bernini, an MP for the Five Star Movement, M5S, was speaking in Parliament on Wednesday, the 12th anniversary of the attacks. He said that the official version of the event has been proven wrong from every point of view. It's clearly false, and by now the world has realized, he says. On September 11, 2001, terrorists hijacked 4 planes in the U.S. 2 crashed in New York's World Trade Center. Another struck the Pentagon in Washington, while the 4th crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers fought against the hijackers. But Bernini believes the account of what happened is a conspiracy. We will probably never know the truth, he says, but it is definitely completely different to the story told by mainstream media, in which in case you can say that everything that you know is false and, as the American phrase goes, it was an inside job, he said. The 26-year-old, elected in February in the central Emilia-Romagna region, went on to elaborate on Twitter, quote, "If someone can show me a video where you can clearly see the plane hitting the Pentagon, the most watched place in the world, I will resign," Bernini wrote. So yeah, let's show us that video, U.S. government, please. We all, not only the Italian MP, but us American patriots would love to see that video evidence as well. Let's move on. Daily.co.uk. Mail online. It really is hands-free. Self-driving Mercedes-Benz is unveiled and should be available within 7 years, 2020. Daimler, the makers of Mercedes-Benz and smart cars, has announced that it will start selling self-driving cars by 2020. It has thought that the car will be able to drive on its own and in most situations, but will still hand control back to the driver during difficult situations such as dealing with traffic lights. The move could help Daimler regain its position as leading luxury car maker from its rival BMW. Now, I've also read a recent article of Nissan jumping in here too by 2022 to have self-driving vehicles. So, I guess in the next 7 to 10 years, we'll be seeing how these self-driving autonomous vehicles will merge to man-driven vehicles, and our rights will be taken away, as they say, our privilege. But no, our driving rights will soon be taken away. Let's move on. Daily.co.uk, another article from Mail Online. And now it's global cooling. Record return of Arctic ice cap as it grows by 60% in a year. Wow, a chilly Arctic summer has left nearly 1 million more square miles of ocean covered with ice than the same time last year, an increase of 60%. Ooh, Al Gore is hating this news. The rebound from 2012's record low comes 6 years after the BBC reported that global warming would leave the Arctic ice free in summer of 2013. Wow, were they wrong. Instead, days before the annual autumn refreeze is due to begin, an unbroken ice sheet more than half the size of Europe already stretches from the Canadian islands to Russia's northern shores. Wow, Al Gore, you are not getting paid for our carbon taxes anymore. With more reports out this debunking global warming, it's official. Al Gore and his inconvenient truth is pretty much false. Let's move on. Blogs.phillymag.com, Curio Theater, company doing lesbian Romeo and Juliet. Wow. You've no doubt seen adaptations and derivations of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet many times, both on screen and on film, but you've probably never seen it done the way Philadelphia's Curio Theater Company is set to do it, with Romeo and Juliet as lesbian lovers. Curio's Romeo and Juliet opens October 11th at Calvary United Methodist Church in West Philadelphia. The show marks the kickoff to the company's 2013 to 2014 season, all which explores ideas surrounding gender. Kicking it off at the old United Methodist Church in West Philadelphia. Something tells me they were a 501c3 church organization, which puts the government and state above God. Let's move on. GodfatherPolitics.com, 8-year-old Muslim bride dies from wedding night injuries from 40-year-old husband having sex with her. Wow, go Islam. Muslims in the U.S. constantly proclaim that they don't want to change anything about America, and that their way of life is no different than ours. But if these statements are outright lies, they fully intend on turning America into an Islamic state, and their ways are very different than those of most Americans. We have already seen instances of Sharia law being imposed in our country over local, state, and federal law. One judge told a man who had been beaten by a Muslim that he deserved it because he insulted Muhammad. The judge was a Muslim, and the attacker was acquitted. Barack Obama has openly supported Muslim terrorists while stripping Christians of their constitutional rights. But if you want to see what some Muslims do, just read on about a wedding that took place in Yemen recently. Wow. Let's go on. Get down here to this case right here. More recently, an 8-year-old girl by the name of Rowan died from internal bleeding sustained from her husband on their wedding night. Many in the international community are calling for arrest of the husband and that the country stop the child bride practice. In fact, Yemen did pass a law that girls had to be 15 years of age to marry, but that law is annulled by the Unified Parliament in the 1990s. Now, this is just Muslims obeying their faith of Islam. This is what they're told that they're allowed to do. That reminds me of an article I was reading last week of a 15-year-old that was just raped by Muslim soldiers, Arab soldiers, and they repeatedly raped her for 15 days, and each Muslim would marry her and divorce her after he had sex with her, and just left to pretty much die. Let's move on to the last article. This is LifeSiteNews.com. Richard Dawkins, there's nothing wrong with a little mild pedophilia. Wow. When Richard Dawkins was 11 years old, his art teacher pulled him onto his lap, reached into his shorts, and fondled his genitals. When he told his schoolmates, he learned he wasn't alone. The man had abused some of his friends, too. 60 years later, the famed atheist author of The God Delusion can't bring himself to condemn the teacher's actions. Dawkins told the Time magazine last week that abuse like he and his classmates suffered causes no lasting harm, and that mild pedophilia, or touching up, as he quotes, shouldn't be judged as harshly as rape or other crimes. Wow, this goes to show you what kind of foundation, that you have no foundation when you have an atheist background. This goes to prove that, if America was an atheist nation, homosexuality and child pornography, child molestation, all this stuff would be quickly accepted, and Christian way of life would be radically changed in America, which is happening now. Looks like they're going to round us up if we don't believe in this type of stuff. Well, that's all the news I have for September 13, 2013. Thanks for checking me out. Check me out on Facebook, YouTube. My name's Jason Kuhn. I'll leave you guys with the song that I brought you in on.
Extremists come together, we march straight ahead. Not going deep, I'm going in over my head. Take it with these stride, take it like a man. Depend upon Jehovah when we get the strength to stand. Raise up the resistance, get in the last word. Slicing up the demons, the scriptures on my sword. Watch the evil tremble when I mention his name. Once again, the goods of him, they're bursting out in flames. Now we're active members of this army of fire. Our retaliation, fighting like vampires. What you gonna do? Make a choice today. Take the lead and follow. All you cowards, get out of the way, come on.
Credits to CR33 for the music, man. Check out that band. Really great band. Only put out one album called The Backlash Uprising. Check them out. Jason Kuhn, clocking out FEMA Region 5. See you tomorrow.